In 180 AD, on the frozen banks of the Danube River, the greatest philosopher to ever rule an empire lay dying. His armies were winning, his borders were secure. His subjects would later call him the last good emperor Rome ever had. And yet Marcus Aurelius died knowing that he had made one decision, just one, that would unravel everything he had spent a lifetime building. He had made his son the next emperor of Rome. That son's name was Commodus, and Marcus knew exactly what Commodus was. This is the story history never tells you about the man who wrote the most famous self-help book in human history. The man who had every advantage, every discipline, every wisdom, and still couldn't save what he loved most. Before we get to the tragedy, we have to clear up the myth. Everyone pictures Marcus Aurelius as a serene philosopher sitting in a marble palace, calmly writing about the nature of the soul between council meetings. The reality is darker, much darker. Marcus Aurelius spent the majority of his reign not writing philosophy, but fighting wars he never wanted to fight, in places he never wanted to be, watching men die around him every single day. He was adopted into the imperial family at 17. He didn't ask for it. He was bookish, deeply private, and spent his early years studying under some of the finest Stoic tutors in the ancient world. He preferred Epictetus and logic to political maneuvering and military parades. When his adoptive father Antoninus Pius died in 161 AD, Marcus Aurelius was suddenly responsible for 70 million people and an empire stretching from the Atlantic coast of Scotland to the deserts of Syria. And within months of taking power, everything started going wrong at once. The Parthians invaded from the east. A devastating plague tore through the Roman military. Then the Germanic tribes, the Marcomanni and Quadi, crossed the Danube in force, shattering a border that had been stable for over 100 years. This was not a crisis Marcus inherited. This was a crisis that arrived on his doorstep fully formed on day one. He didn't write in his private journal that he deserved better than this. He didn't complain that the job was unfair. He put on his armor, left Rome, and marched to the Danube frontier. He would not return for nearly a decade. Here is what almost no one teaches you about the Meditations. That book, the one sitting on millions of nightstands in 2026, was not written for you. It was not written for anyone. Marcus called it "To Myself." It was a private journal, written in Greek so his own Roman staff couldn't read it, scribbled in military tents between campaigns in the freezing mud of the Germanic frontier. Every single entry is a man arguing with himself, reminding himself not to lose his temper with incompetent subordinates, warning himself not to become arrogant simply because men called him Lord, pushing himself to get out of bed on mornings when the weight of the empire felt physically crushing. When you have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, remind yourself, I have to go to work. As a human being, what do I have to complain about if I'm going to do what I was born for? This is not a confident philosopher at peace with existence. This is a man on the edge every single day, holding himself together through sheer self-discipline and borrowed Stoic wisdom. That is the real Marcus Aurelius. Not the marble statue, not the serene philosopher king. A man who was terrified of becoming a tyrant, terrified of wasting the position he never asked for, terrified of the gap between the person he wanted to be and the person he actually was on his worst days. The fact that we have the Meditations at all is an accident of history. When Marcus died, a staff member saved the manuscripts. Marcus almost certainly would have burned them himself. Now we get to the uncomfortable part. Marcus Aurelius had a biological son. His name was Lucius Aurelius Commodus. Commodus was everything his father was not, charismatic in a terrifying way, obsessed with gladiatorial combat, increasingly convinced he was the reincarnation of Hercules. He renamed the months of the Roman calendar after himself. He entered the Colosseum personally to slaughter animals and disabled opponents to demonstrate his divine power to the crowd. Marcus knew what Commodus was. He had watched him up close for years. Advisors warned Marcus. His own court questioned whether Commodus had the temperament to rule. The historical record is clear. This was not a case where the problems were hidden. Commodus showed his character early and showed it repeatedly. Marcus had real options. Roman emperors had built an extraordinary system, adoption, precisely to avoid leaving power to unworthy biological heirs. Marcus himself had been adopted because the emperor before him recognized he was the best man for the role, not because of blood. Marcus had brilliant generals, proven administrators, men who had demonstrated real competence on the campaigns Marcus himself had led. He chose Commodus anyway. He made Commodus co-emperor at 15. He watched him for 5 more years. and he never reversed the decision. Historians have debated this for centuries. Some argue Marcus was simply blinded by parental love, the one weakness the Stoics could never fully armor against. Some argue he miscalculated, convinced that responsibility would mature his son the way responsibility had matured him. But read the Meditations carefully and another explanation emerges. Marcus writes again and again about the limits of what a person can control. We cannot control outcomes. We cannot control what other people choose to do. We can only control our own choices, our own effort, and our own integrity in the present moment. Perhaps Marcus had made peace with a future he could not prevent. He had spent 20 years fighting to hold the empire together. He had given everything the role demanded, and he may have genuinely believed that a contested succession, even one that elevated a flawed heir, was less dangerous than the civil wars that followed whenever an emperor tried to bypass blood inheritance. He may have been right about that specific calculation. He was wrong about Commodus. Commodus ruled for 12 years before being strangled by a wrestler he'd been planning to have killed first. The chaos that followed, what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century, produced over 50 emperors in 50 years. Most of them were assassinated. The careful world Marcus Aurelius spent his entire adult life building fell apart within a single generation of his death. And here is why this story matters right now. Marcus Aurelius is sold to us as the answer. The Meditations are packaged as a manual for modern living, a guide to becoming disciplined and wise and unshakable. And there is genuine wisdom in those pages. But the complete truth is that the most disciplined, most philosophically rigorous, most self-aware ruler in Western history made a catastrophic error. He saw it coming. He couldn't stop it. And he kept writing in his journal anyway. He didn't abandon his principles because the outcome was uncertain. He didn't stop doing the work because he could see what was on the other side. He just kept going. The night before he died on campaign, historians believe Marcus Aurelius refused food, choosing to accelerate death rather than extend a suffering that was becoming a burden on the men around him. Even in how he chose to die, he was still Marcus Aurelius. The man who wrote, "Do not indulge in such thoughts as these. I lead a laborious life and will forever lead one," did, until the last hour of the last day. The stories they leave out of every textbook are not always the triumphant ones. Sometimes the most powerful story is the one about the man who had every advantage, every wisdom, every discipline, every tool, and still could not save what he loved most. That is the real lesson of the Meditations. Not that Stoicism gives you perfect outcomes, but that it gives you a way to keep working clearly, honestly, and with full integrity, even when you already know what's coming. If this is the kind of story you're looking for, the real ones, the ones they cut from the curriculum, subscribe to MindForge Stories. New videos every week. And if you made it to the end of this video, the algorithm sees that. It genuinely matters. Thank you for being here.